Okay, good afternoon all. Thank you for everyone for joining us today for our digital transformation strategy webinar. This is the first one we've done of this sort, so we're doing this in association with WinMan. And just to explain that, so BFM are British furniture manufacturers, so we're the trade association, and WinMan are an associate member of BFM, so we've got to put this together to do it together. The really purpose really is just to try and pick the concept of digital transformation, but map it more closely to our industry really, so there's a clear sort of furniture industry direction to this. So hopefully you'll find it interesting. So thank you all for joining us today, and thank you to our colleagues from WinMan. I think Jonathan will be introducing everyone later. But just to give a quick overview really from my perspective, I've personally been involved in 3 ERP digital transformations with different businesses, 2 within the furniture industry and 1 elsewhere. And I think it's fair to say that the first one I did, which was in an engineering business, was a very long time ago now. And it's sort of at that point I was personally very involved in that. I was on the project team, so got sort of first-hand experience of the nitty-gritty detail. And some of the reasons I think it's worth understanding, because I think they're common across any business, but we'd reached the point really where our businesses were, our systems were creeping. We've got different systems in different departments. We're running half the business on spreadsheets on Excel. And we got to the point where no 2 department spreadsheets matched. We didn't really have a handle on our costs. The whole business was sort of creaking in and working inefficiently. And in fact, in the first case, we were actually operating a multi-site, multi-currency business. So it was pretty complex with something like 10,000 customers and 20,000 SKUs. So we sort of reached the point of saying, well, we have no alternative, and it was a necessary transformation. I've done 2 since then, both within the furniture industry, one with Pock and Old, who were then part of the Silent Night Group, and more recently with Urquhart Furniture. And I think the reasons were similar really, about the need for a single truth in terms of the information that flowed around the business, and a lot of inefficiency problems and communication problems. But I think some of the learnings I just wanted to run through, I suppose, as someone who's been through it, not as a vendor of ERP, but as a business that's implemented ERP, is I think there is no underestimating the amount of work and time that is required. This isn't something that will be a quick project. I think you need to go into it with your eyes open, that it will need a lot of resource, it will need a lot of time. And I think to make it work, a lot of that resource needs to be some of the best people in the business. So in my experience, you need a project team, you need a multidisciplinary project team. And I think typically a lot of people think, oh, it's a fairly quick IT job. It isn't an IT job, it's a full business, full system, all departments job. And it needs a lot of upfront planning, a lot of detail work to work out how to do it well. I know later Jacqueline will be talking a lot more about selecting the right partner for the system implementation. I think that's key, and I think it's important to put in the right time to actually do your selection right. And finding the right partner is a lot about mapping the strengths of different ERP vendors against what you need for your business. So again, I think it's important to spend the time up front selecting well. And then I think one of the key learnings for me, that once you've selected your partner, is to try and work as closely as possible with the systems that they've got. And I think there's always a tendency for wanting to modify things and tweak the system to suit the business. I think wherever possible, it's best to process map, work out ways of actually mapping your business to work with the vendor system. And I think the fewer the modifications, the easier the implementation will be. It's always a difficult one to understand and believe when you're doing that, but my experience is it's well worth doing. And I think for me, the other thing really is just sort of the outcomes really. So having done systems implementation, there is no question that the benefits are there. it's worth all of the hard work up front, and they are time consuming, but it's worth a lot of work up front. And I think for me, some of the key benefits would be the reliability of information and the clarity of information. So there is one single truth within the business. Everyone's working off the same data. You're not sort of fighting over different sets of spreadsheets. There's no question you will get in time big improvements in terms of efficiency in all sorts of different areas. I think the visibility of costs and therefore your margins will become much, much better. And obviously, if you've got confidence in the clarity of your costs, then your decision making for profitability is much better. And I think one of the key things for me as well would be the quality of management reporting, so you can get information, accurate information very quickly. And for me, those are some of the key benefits really of going through a digital transformation. So those are really just some overviews for me from my experience of implementing these systems. Thankfully, I have some experts on hand who can hopefully go into this in a lot more detail. So at that, I would hand over to Jonathan for the next stage. Thank you. Okay, so hopefully I'm up on screen now. Yeah, I'm just doing a brief introduction. So thanks to Nick from BFM. I'm here. I'm the one of the directors of WinMan, responsible for sales. I also have Chelsea with me from our office in the US, who's going to give part of the presentation on the advantages of that will come from an ERP digital transformation initiative. And as Nick mentioned, Jacqueline, who will talk about quite what a big project it is, and the important considerations when starting on this journey and how to get through to the end. So if we can see the next slide, please. Starting off with what is digital transformations and what ERP can provide alongside technology. We'll then be swapping over to Jacqueline, who'll talk about whether you need to make the change and the selection process, and then back to me for a brief kind of WinMan company overview, and to touch on some of the features within our product that we think offer a close fit to the sort of business processes that a furniture company has. So that's my bit. So over to Chelsea now, I believe.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. So as Jonathan mentioned, I am Chelsea McMaster, and I help with sales here in the US. But before I did sales, I did a lot of work with implementations. So I was an implementation manager, and I worked with a lot of our customers. So a lot of the things I'm going to be telling you today is kind of based off of that experience. As I go through, if there are any questions that you have, please put them in the Q&A box, and we will be touching on all of those at the end. But as you think of them, throw them in there so that we don't have to remember at the end. So what is digital transformation? So when we talk about digital transformation, really what we're talking about is using technology to our advantage to help deliver the best products to our customers, for you to deliver the best products to your customers and give the customers the best experience. So that could be, viewing your reports online to get better data, eliminating paper. Those are some simple ones. But it can also be, using e-commerce and allowing your e-commerce site to bring orders, directly into your ERP, and allowing the ERP to automatically generate, tell you what it is that you need to purchase, what you need to plan. So really, there's a broad range of the ways that we can use digital transformation. And we'll talk a little bit about, deciding for you what is best for you. But essentially, what we're talking about is creating new processes or modifying our existing processes to, again, better our customers' experience. So like I said, this is going to be, mean different things for different companies. And really, you'll be able to decide what is best for your company. So this may mean, automating certain processes. It may look at your IT infrastructure. Other people may want, alerts and pop-ups, advanced reporting. Everyone kind of has different things that are really going to help them. Maybe it's all of the above. But when we're talking about this, it's really looking at what is best for your company. So the digital transformation does require talent, and this isn't just people. I mean, people are important, but you're going to want a good ERP system and other aspects as well to kind of bring everything together and give you the best experience. So many companies are invested in technology in one way or the other. It's, we can't really avoid it these days, right? But really what we want to do is make sure that we're collecting, the data that we need and understanding why. How often are we collecting data, filling in forms or something, and we're not exactly sure how that data is being used. So we want to make sure that we get accurate data that is really useful to making our business decisions. Every input leads to an output, some sort of report. Then people are using that data to then make a business decision. So we want to make sure that we are able to get an easy way to input the data, collect relevant data, and really communicate why is this information needed and how are we going to use it to make those business decisions. So with that in mind, digital transformation obviously requires an end-to-end mindset, right? What is it that, what does sales look like if we are using this new efficient process? What does purchasing look like? Shipping, every area of the business, every piece is going to impact your customer's experience. If we aren't getting products in time, we may cause delays. So every aspect of the business really needs to be considered during this. So it is difficult, for businesses sometimes to see what is needed because we are in the, really in the depth of it. And we're really close to our processes and we've been doing them for a long time. But this is a really great time that we live in that technology is always changing and it's always offering a benefit and a way that we can, do things better. So there are always opportunities for us to be able to do things in a more efficient way. And there's always an option out there that we can, update how we do things. So a lot of times the only thing that's holding us back is the task of doing it. As Nick mentioned, we know that this is a big undertaking, but it has a lot of benefits. So a lot of the aspect of digital transformation is really putting in processes that work. So I hear a lot of times, during implementations, it's, we're currently doing 18 steps, can we automate that? But really we need to look at why are we doing those steps? Is it the system or is it the company? And, if it is the company, then why is that data being collected? Who's analyzing it? Who's making decisions off of it? So again, coming full circle of, making sure the data that we're entering is relevant. So the benefits of investing in the technology. So I'm going to, these are all kind of really key. And so I'm going to go through each of these here. So, we want to standardize, do the same thing every single time. We want to standardize and support the optimal business processes. We want to improve the inventory management, which means lower cost. So, a lot of times this is looking at like an MRP system. I apologize, I'm not sure, it just keeps going. So an MRP system built into your ERP is going to allow you to buy what you actually need instead of just kind of hoping, we have a lot of big orders coming in, I think we need more of this. And then you're spending more money on products that you may or may not need in order to fulfill that order. Obviously, it also allows you to kind of look ahead into the future and bundle some of those purchases. We want to introduce the management of lean practices. gain internal efficiencies and better communications. So again, entering data one time, everyone can see it. We're not looking at different spreadsheets or different versions of spreadsheets. This is really being able to trust that we put in that data one time and everyone can make, the decisions based off of that data. Another benefit, we get better management of customer and supplier interactions, which is obviously very important. Reduce operating costs and enable growth. So again, we're planning, and when we're planning and we can see all of our orders in the system, we can see that we may actually have more capacity than we thought. We can have less overtime, all of these things that the system can do for us that we may not be able to do, using manual processes. Another benefit, improved operational and manufacturing processes. And then, of course, automating manual processes and reducing our lead times. So with all of this, with everything that we're talking about, we're really trying to get to improved business growth, improved employee satisfaction, right? People want to be able to show up at work and know that what they're doing is beneficial and has value, rather than entering data that may or may not be used. So really, by giving people a lean process that they can really see the benefits of, we have improved employee satisfaction, increased profits and growth, and increased internal capacity. So really, if we're cutting out all extra steps, we're going to see so much more capacity that people can actually do, more value-added work. And then, what we're really looking for here, work smarter, not harder, right? The old adage there, which is really, really huge. Everyone wants to, do things more efficiently. So how can the ERP help and the benefits of that? So what is an ERP? The ERP is, your manufacturing software. It's going to be your central location for all the pivotal aspects of your business. So again, every aspect of the business matters in delivering, a valued product to our customers. So purchasing, invoicing, planning, manufacturing, every single aspect, if we can have it in one fully integrated system, then that's how we're able to really cut out all the back and forth and all the spreadsheets, and being able to say, I entered this data, everyone can make a decision off of it, and I know that it's accurate. So specifically then to the furniture manufacturers. So an ERP system really is huge for furniture manufacturers. You guys definitely are going to need a centralized source of information and being able to share that information across departments, rather than having kind of that solo, mentality of, this is what my department needs, really just thinking about the whole business. Custom orders can easily be managed with a built-in product configurator. So any sort of update or any change that a customer will want, anything that they want custom made, is very easy within an ERP. We can easily obtain business reports within an ERP system, which obviously, being able to make decisions based on accurate reports, being able to trust your reports, being able to access your reports, all of these are going to be really important. And then, real-time updates on your progress. So as you're, putting together these orders, it's really key to be able to know exactly what step of the way, what step along the way your order is in. Customers will be calling and, constantly asking for an update, and you'll be able to give it to them. So other benefits, obviously very important within the furniture industry, is added security. You'll want the ERP to be very secure and protect your data, and everything with that. You'll have automation of tasks. So, anything that was previously carried out manually, a lot of times these are probably your spreadsheets, going in, making sure you have the same version, trying to find data. Being able to automate everything is going to be able to create a streamlined approach. You'll be able to collect information, and problem solving and accountability are going to be very important for your automation of tasks. We will also have increased efficiency and productivity. So, people are able to make clear decisions, and it's much easier then to set up your operational targets and meet your goals, be able to deliver your orders on time and accurate orders as well. And then, of course, we need to, we always want to save time and money and minimize the waste. I know, especially, with furniture manufacturers that I've worked with, margin is so important. And so, really being able to cut out those costs. A lot of times, there's, again, the old saying, you kind of make your money with it, by cutting out your costs. And so by streamlining all these processes, you're going to see a huge benefit there. So how can technology be used to manage uncertainty? So of course, in this time, we have to talk about managing uncertainty, and COVID-19 has been a big part of that. But as we know, there is more than just COVID. There's always going to be uncertainty within our industries, and we need to be able to manage that. But during COVID specifically, technology investment has really been intensified. People have really found where it is that, maybe processes just don't work when we're all at home. And so being able to have a system where even when we're all remote and home, you can all, check on that data and get accurate data from the web is important. But also being able to enter the data quickly and easily. We know that there is a lot on our plates these days, and so being able to cut out all of the inefficiencies is really important. So a lot of times, with having an ERP, our customers who have upgraded or implemented the ERP right before COVID, a lot of them have called and said, thank goodness, this has been just really important for us during this time to be able to, continue to operate. We can't just walk over to a cubicle and ask for a piece of paper or data anymore. So many customers have obviously realized the benefits of all of that, and it really has come, changed from a nice to have to this is the only way that we can work now. So again, moving forward, even beyond COVID, the ERP is always going to help you manage your uncertainty and risk. So you can always provide greater insight and accuracy of data. We can keep a much closer eye on our processes, our operations, our costs, where it is, our margins, where it is that, everything, you're going to get so many more details about how everyone's spending their time. Compliance management is obviously key. So an ERP system, you'll be able to store documents, put processes in place, put stops in place, and really manage when people, what people are doing. If you don't want something to happen, you can easily put in a stop and make sure that everyone complies. Provide accessibility, and then also, data security is really important. So, any risk is, we want to eliminate. So, do you need to make a change? So, some of the early warning signs that a change is needed, and some of these, may be familiar. Jobs and activities are taking longer to complete. You're hearing complaints about the system being slow or containing inaccurate data. The increase of repetitive tasks, having to add more staff or adding workload to the staff that you have. inefficiencies impacting your customer service. We can't change to support a smarter method of working, so you're kind of locked in where you are and you can't make the changes that you want. Any sort of excessive paper trail, excessive amount of paper around the office is a sign that you need a change. And then obviously other reasons, if your business model has changed, if you're going in a different direction, if you're looking to, really grow in the future and your system no longer supports that. Obtaining critical information is problematic, and reports within the system requires other means of verification. If we're still using a lot of spreadsheets and manual processes to, fill in the gaps of functionality. Your system is outdated or is unsupported. Obviously, this is a huge one. And your relationship with your software provider is strained. That may be a good reason to make a change. Or your current system costs are high and your value is low. Okay. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jacqueline, and she's going to talk about selecting and deciding.
Thank you for that, Chelsea. What I'm trying to focus on in this session is really to try and give you some indication of what a best practice approach is to specifying and selecting and implementing a system. So basically, I'll give you a quick overview about Allman Horrocks Consulting. Then we'll go through how to start the selection process. Then looking at how to decide on which system and which provider you should follow up, you should go with, and then how to ensure that you have a successful outcome from the project. So managing change. Okay, AHC, who are we and what do we do? I'll give you just a quick flavour of what we do. We're basically independent, family-run business and management consultancy. We've been established over 25 years, working with companies of all shapes, sizes and industry sectors in various modes, but also in the implementation and selection of ERP systems. We have worked with furniture manufacturers and we have worked with not-for-profit. But if you want to find a little bit more out about us, then please have a look at our website. You'll see what we do and what people say about us. Let's move on to how to start the selection process. Okay, so the first thing really is, before you even look at what systems are out there, is to define what you need from a system. So it's trying to get you to focus on what you need to deliver the why. And Chelsea talked then quite eloquently about different reasons for changing. So it could be that you're experiencing growth as an organization, that your systems are coming to end of life, that you've got changes in your business process model, that you're looking at changes in supply chain management. All of those would have an impact on how you're going to do things and perhaps what a system can do. So I think once you've defined what you need to do, the main thing to look at is focus on processes. Try and define what good looks like. Processes evolve over time. And if you've not made changes to systems or organization for many years, then it's likely that there'll be lots of inefficiencies in there, that there'll be things that current systems are not supporting. So you'll have workarounds, you'll have lots of offline backup systems, Excel worksheets, things like that going on to support the business. So if we go back to the basics and think about business processes, most people have a better understanding of that than they would have on technology, and they find it less threatening to talk about that. So it makes the project more understandable within the business, and that in turn helps to secure buy-in and deliver successful change. And all of these factors minimize the project risk and maximize your potential return on investment. It is important to think about that. You need to start and build a business case from the start of the project, essentially. so that will help you to establish what a sensible budget is for the expenditure and the timescales. So quantifying the cost of doing nothing is really important. If you, in simplistic terms, it's a case of looking at all the offline Excel worksheets that are going on and how much effort's involved in creating those every month or every day. There's a cost associated with that, and that's one way of starting on evaluating what the cost of doing nothing is. And that then in turn helps you to evaluate the benefits of change, because if you can redeploy that effort into something that's more productive towards the business, then that justifies the expenditure towards investing in a new system. These sort of tasks are things that not many people within organisations do on a regular basis. And so it is worth considering independent support if you need it, if you don't have the resources internally to release to do this sort of work. An external view of processes and best practice is valuable, I would say, to most businesses, because coming in from the outside, you're not assuming anything is done for any reason. So you ask the stupid question, why are you doing it that way? And quite often there isn't really an answer. So in that way, you dig below the surface of, well, we've always done it this way, therefore we will always continue to do it that way. In addition, external independent support can have a better understanding of the system marketplace. It is quite complex out there, in that it's not a case of just looking at solutions that are available. There's different versions of solutions that are available. There are tailored solutions for different industry verticals, and also there's a reseller partnership relationship between many vendors who offer sales via resellers. So trying to find out which is the best partner for you and which is the best system for you is quite difficult if you've not done your research. Also, I think a structured approach, if it's something that you've done more than once, then your process evolves with time, but it becomes a structured approach that you can step through. If you're having to invent that approach as well as manage a big project, it can be quite resource consuming. And I think it's good to have a good understanding of how ERP vendors, the information the ERP vendors need in order to be able to put forward a sensible proposal and solution for your business. I think preparation is key to projects like this, and I would recommend avoiding looking at systems until you've defined what you need from them. That in turn helps the vendors then to meet your requirements, because you've got a better idea of what you want rather than them trying to second guess that. So if we focus on reviewing the business process model first, does it really support your future business needs? Systems projects are a really good catalyst for change, because everything is up for grabs essentially. And it would be probably the biggest mistake you make to just implement a system to support what you're doing exactly now and all of the data that goes with it. It would not only be costly, but the effort that you would go through to implement a system that way would mean that you probably would never change. So it's best to think about these sort of things before you actually engage in deciding on a system. So identify opportunities for improving processes. So as they evolve over time, generally speaking, there will be opportunities to review those and to look at making them far more robust and less dependent on key individuals. What you tend to find is where processes are not robust and systems are not supporting those processes, there's certain people within the organisation that are always really, really busy, and they're the centre of all the information that people go to get reports, to make things work when a customer's complaining, to get product out the door on time. You need to be able to free those people up from that, because that's essentially a firefighting role, into being more proactive and so improving the process so it's not just working because of those individuals. When you change processes, inevitably you will need to realign roles and responsibilities of the people that are working with them. One of the biggest factors that causes people to delay in implementation is that data's not ready. So the earlier you start to look at your data and to eliminate duplications, to look at all the offline data processing that's going on, understand how clean your data is, where it's held, and try and rationalize reporting. Those are the three main things to really focus on in terms of data. When you change into a new system, the way you look at information will be completely different to what you're doing now. So really try and cut down the number of reports that you need to manage the business from day one, and then start to reintroduce where you actually need them going forwards with a new system. You'll find that within the business, there'll be lots of reports which are basically very similar and could be rationalized significantly, and that takes out a lot of the pain in implementation. And then finally on this, in terms of preparation planning, be realistic. These are big projects, no matter what size of a company you are, they consume resources, and it's much more important to plan ahead and to be realistic with that planning, rather than trying to say, well, we're going to get something up and running in 3 months and then we'll tweak it as we go from there. It's not a realistic objective to have. If we look at now deciding on a system, there's a number of stages involved in evaluating potential solutions. Initially, we're talking about developing some form of specification, and where I've talked about looking at processes, that's essentially providing a description of how processes work now and what the business is looking to achieve in future, so that paints a picture of you, not only now, but also of where you're heading. And from that, we can pull together what we call a functional specification. So this is really where you look at what a system needs to do to deliver this future process model. And those details can be broken down into key business process areas such as sales, production, warehouse, finance, HR. So it's really trying to say, right, the system must do this for us to be able to actually function as a business. That in turn will filter which vendors and which solutions are going to be suitable for you. And so normally we would recommend going to a long list of vendors initially, go out to tender. And by long, I mean 6 to 8 vendors that have got a proven track record in your area of business, your industry sector, that have got the right functional fit against your specification. And then you request proposals from those vendors. Essentially review the functional fit, the track record, costs, timings, and what they've shown as their understanding of your requirements. So it's quite a lengthy process. Firstly, the functional fit would be how close they can meet your functional specifications. So we get vendors to mark off against that. So as Nick said earlier, it's a case of saying this is what our requirements are. How close can you get out of the box to delivering those requirements? Ultimately, from this process, you aim to shortlist down to 3 vendors and go then through demonstrations. So there's a lot of work up front before you actually start and actually physically look at systems. And that's not to say you don't have a look online and look at demos that are available, but before you actually engage and consume time in long, lengthy vendor demonstrations, it's best to do your homework first. In terms of system demonstrations, it's very difficult to judge systems against each other without doing some preparation to level the playing field. So essentially, if you prepare a tailored demonstration agenda, which covers your key requirements, and you might keep that quite tight for the first round of demos and say, well, we know that our production and supply chain management is the key part of the business that we need to focus on. So therefore, we'll put a demonstration agenda for those 2 areas of the business. And we'll get the vendors who are shortlisted to demonstrate in the same way against that agenda. It's important, I think, to get people from all levels in the business involved in the demonstrations, because you're all going on a journey, and the more involvement you can have of people along that journey, the less resistance you'll have when it comes to actually implementing the change. So get them involved in the relevant sessions of the demonstrations. So if it's a sales related session, anybody who's involved in the sales processes, get them to be in on the demonstrations and to rate what they think, how they think each vendor performs against their requirements. Ultimately, it might be that you need to revisit some of the demonstrations to clarify in more detail. So it might be that you have multiple demonstrations with 2 or 3 vendors, and at the end of the process, you should be able to understand who is your preferred vendor, who is the one who is most able to meet your requirements. You'll get a good feel for how they fit with you personally. And I think that's important as well. It's a long-term partnership ahead. So you need to be comfortable that the people who you're seeing, you can work with. And you'll have talked through their track record. And then the final stage really is a case of due diligence. It's really taking up references, reference site visits if they're feasible. I would encourage you to go and visit the preferred vendors' facilities too, and meet the wider team, because up until this stage you will have really mostly engaged with salespeople, and yet the people who are going to implement will be one team, and then ultimately the team who are going to maintain and provide you ongoing service will be another team. So it's good to get a feel that you're not only seeing the best team, that's the sales team, that you also can get on with the other teams working behind the scenes. And then finally, it's really trying to put together then a plan, working with the preferred vendor as you go through to contract negotiation to agree how you're going to implement the system. Go along with their guidance. They should know their system best. If they say this works, it going this way in terms of implementation is better, they will want a successful outcome. So I would go along with their recommendations, but you've got to bear in mind priorities for your business too. So you've got to the stage where you've chosen a system. Now you've got the easy part, which is to implement it. There's been lots of research carried out to look at potential barriers to success, and you'll see from this graph here that resistance to change, inadequate sponsorship, and having unrealistic expectations are 3 of the most significant ones. So, along with project management, another change-related one, and scope creep, where if you've not already defined what you want from the system, then it's quite easy for projects to go off piste, essentially, because there'll be lots of system functionality that could seem attractive to you, but it's not actually required. So it might be something that you might look at and consider further down the journey, but to begin with, the focus needs to be on what do you need to get up and running to be able to move the business forward. I don't think you can fail, you should fail to recognise the level and impact of change. So the opportunity for this change needs to be embraced in order to justify the investments and the upheaval that's going to be involved. Processes will change and become more efficient. And as such, people will need to adjust the way that they work and potential changes to their roles. And this is kind of particularly important, I think, for long-serving employees, because they've been used to their area of work and what they do and who they see, where the barriers are. We do this and then we pass it to them and they do that. It's going to change if you put a new system in. It's very, very likely to change. So it's important to either bring them with you or manage them into a different area where they can work effectively. There's going to be less data entry and manipulation, because if we get this right, the system's going to be able to manage that much more effectively than people in Excel offline. So people will be able to take on a much more proactive decision-making role rather than being reactive. So there's not going to be this rush at the month end to get all the data out and to decide what you're going to do next. You'll already be seeing that because it's going to be live data. Obviously, change, most people don't like change. They're quite comfortable working in their own little bubble. So to overcome this fear, it's important to explain why you're doing this and to develop a plan to outline the reasons for the change and the benefits it will bring. If you effectively communicate and make sure that people understand at all levels in the organisation, that is a very good way of making sure that the change is managed and you don't get fight back. So essentially, it's about defining the change, identifying the opportunities, and then prioritising those. Process mapping is a very useful tool to help visualise and communicate new ways of working. So in the past, you would map existing processes, which would look a bit like a spaghetti. You would then iron out the duplication and the wastes. You can probably shorten the process slightly by talking through the first part where we talk about the business review. You get a good feeling of where there are opportunities for improvement there, and then map how processes can work, and then involve people in buying into those new ways of working. That means that people are engaged in the process, and it keeps the focus on, when you go through to implementation, that you've got something documented that you can show and say, look, this is how we want our processes to work. Albeit that a system might not be able to meet that exactly. And I agree with Nick in that you would then try and work the way the system works. At least you've got something that steers you away from looking at 25 ways to process a sales order. You're looking at 2 or 3 ways with that system can manage it because you've already got something defined. And on the people side, I think assessing and managing the change, it's about recognition, it's encouraging people, reassuring them, it's having a positive message that although people are going to be, the work is going to change, and people are not going to be as busy processing data, that your plan is to grow and redeploy those people. Measurement and measuring improvements important, and communication again. Then finally, resourcing the change. It really does require commitment at all levels, and the importance of leadership from the top in the role of a project sponsor can't be sort of under-evaluated. Project managers need to be empowered to make decisions, and they should be supported by a steering group at the next level up. And then, as Nick mentioned earlier, it's about allocating the right resources to the project team. And these are probably the people who are the busiest in the company. But it's really important to get them involved because they are going to have the right level of influence and kudos within the organisation to take others with them. So there it's about reallocating duties, providing reassurance to future roles for anybody who's assigned to a project team, especially if you're reallocating their duties, is really important. Otherwise, you know, they might be reluctant to hand over what they feel is their area of work if they're not going to be able to go back into it. And recognition and reward, you know, people are going to be working hard for this. So in terms of measuring and realising true project success, most projects focus on was the project completed on time and on budget. And I think what we're trying to show that it's also important to get full benefit from a project where you're getting the business focus and making sure that you've managed that change. So in summary, it's a 3-phase approach really. The first is the business review. So it's making sure all your data's in good shape, that you have a good understanding of how the future business process model is going to work, that you have an idea of the level of change, and you've got a team in place to be able to manage the process. The next stage is evaluating potential systems, and it's important to have a structured process there so that you can compare like for like against different vendors. And then finally, it's implementing the system that you've decided to go with and managing the change, focusing on maximizing benefits and avoiding scope creep. Keep focused on what you set out in phase 1. Just some examples of people who we've worked with. Again, you'll get this from our website if you're interested, but I thought you might be interested to see that we did work with Urkel, and this is some of the feedback we got from the work we did with them. And I can hand you back now. Is it to Chelsea?
Jonathan, I believe.
Jonathan, sorry.
No, that's fine.
My section now, which is just a little showcase of WinMan as a business and our product, which is the ERP WinMan system. Just before I start that, I think a lot of the messages have come over very clearly, and certainly from a WinMan perspective, we agree with everything that's been said from Nick, Chelsea, and Jacqueline, particularly over things like that it is a big project. It needs top-down support. People that are involved in that implementation need to be supported and have that the time made available, and there need to be kind of clear objectives for the overall project. And so a lot of that we concur with and work with as a business. We've been going over 27 years. Win came along with the Windows operating system, Man for manufacturing. So that's sort of our history, if you like, was to take the Windows operating system with its friendly user interface and provide easy to use systems across the whole business, from sort of your CRM to your quotation to your sales, into your logistics with inventory management and purchasing, and then the actual production side, the manufacturing and shipping, and all fully integrated with finance, and more lately with more HR functions such as time and attendance, holiday booking, skills management. Kind of encompasses a little bit about what an ERP system is about. So we are UK based. We also have an American subsidiary, and who Chelsea has represented today. We probably support somewhere in the region of 3,000 individual users. We're both a single site and multi-site and multi-company system. We've got customers that have data in different languages, so the part number would be use the kind of the European or character set, and sometimes the Chinese character set, dependent on where the customer is and what documents being printed or what's shown on screen. So multilingual as well. We are effectively a single solution provider. WinMan is the only product. We are both the authors and the distributors, and we focus heavily on the development of both the system and our processes. So we see ourselves very much as a commercial business. So we want to work more efficiently. We want to work better. We want to provide our customers with a solution, so that what we've just had discussed, i.e. reasons for change, don't exist. So so the system is flexible, so that if our customers want to improve, or move, their business model changes, that WinMan can flex with that. Being able to provide good value and in both support and in terms of as they want to move forward, they've got good value from a consultancy basis, from a resources basis. What do we provide? We're always looking to provide that enhancement in service. And some of the pillars of our business are customer retention, and to be able to grow through references. We think those are, the easiest sale is a reference from another business, and once we've got hold of somebody, we want them to have no reason to leave us and to be satisfied with our service. So that's some of the key elements that are behind the WinMan business. And like I said, we've shown continual growth. We grow at about 10 to 15% per annum, and have done through our sort of 27 plus years since we came to market. So we're based in the UK. We have an office in the US as well. So kind of covered that point. So specifically with furniture, we've kind of put a bit of a slide here together, which and some of the benefits are global. Some of them are specific. So product configuration, the one at the top. Not everybody here maybe from an audience perspective, will have that high degree of personalization and configuration, but it is a very strong feature in the furniture business. So, from say sofas, being able to choose fabrics, being able to choose leg styles, color, through to say with beds. So one of the our reference sites is Fermanac. They do so they have different colors for sort of the fabric. They've got different options. So sometimes you've got they do kind of beds that where the mattress will lift up at the back if you want to read, or if you want to help to get out of the bed, and you can have sort of a single or a split. You can have different one side of the bed could have a hard mattress, the other one could be a soft, those kind of things. So even in different areas of furniture manufacturing, configuration is quite key. The yield aspect has been mentioned by Chelsea, so being able to nest well, or being able to monitor the quality of supply. So with fabric, again, you can get on a roll of fabric, you may get variable yield dependent on the quality, and you need good feedback on that, especially where where fabric is very expensive. If you start talking about hides and the element, with leather, again, it's very important to monitor that quality, and to be able to do, there's often a trade-off between efficiently using a material and the amount of time that it takes. So using technology to affect that. So a good example there is with one of our sort of higher end sofa manufacturers. When it gets it, they will provide a quote at an initial level, but if it's an exceptionally expensive fabric, they will then actually put that through their nesting software, so they can really hone down on the cost of providing that fabric, to be able to know that they're providing a quote that means they'll be making the relevant margin. If we then move on to transport allocation, either through partner companies or own transport, a lot of furniture is bulky, so is delivered, particularly in the UK, via dedicated, not just via a carrier, but via like I say, own transport or transport routes, where a vehicle is going out and doing multiple drops on a particular route one day in the week, and then later on in the week it's going to a different region of the country. And so that will have an effect on, because again, furniture being bulky, when you need to make it, you want to make it as late as possible but not be late, so it can go straight onto the transport and be delivered to the customer. So there's a fair degree of just-in-time element there. And those same things as we look at go forward, being able to provide an actual promise date to the customer, because again, in certain elements, if we take fabric, where you're dealing with a lot of fabrics which are bought to order, the lead time of that fabric is important. So sometimes if a wholesaler, if you've got it in stock, you can start immediately. If a wholesaler has it and it's available, then you can grab an allocation. You've then got that wholesaler's lead time. Sometimes the wholesaler doesn't have any, and so you're then looking for the next time the mill will be making that fabric. So you've got those elements at the early stage to be able to provide a promise date to the customer. So these are some of the key specifics to the furniture business that in the customers we've worked with over the years, and a lot of what has come into WinMan has been through working with best practice. And so really our pitch here is that WinMan has a very strong vertical in the furniture market space. Okay, I'll come back to the business intelligence slide because that's really the one that I wanted to sort of touch on at the end. Yeah, so we've talked about some of the kind of the functional elements there. So some of our customers and ERCOL as well is the implementation that Nick has talked about, and Jacqueline were involved in ERCOL, and in fact WinMan was the selected system, and the kind of things I've spoken about have been absolutely key. So being able to measure, being able to support the process with robust software and processes, and to be able to provide that data that enables sort of the performance of the business to be analysed and decisions to be made. So Libus, again, a large volume manufacturer. So they make about 25,000 pieces of furniture a month. So that those would be from a single-seater, two-seater sofa, three-seater, those kind of elements. So a large volume manufacturer. Every single one configured. So typically a customer will walk into a furniture showroom, one of their customers, and will choose a model, will choose the fabric, the scatter cushions, the leg types, as I've just mentioned, and that will be passed down to Libus through often EDI, so using what was called TraderNet protocols. They will pass a sales order down to Libus, which will have that furniture model and those various selections, and Libus will put that through their product configurator and be able to give the customer a due date and that they're going to work to, but based on that, and then all the downstream work will start of buying the correct fabrics and planning for the wood assemblies, etc., within that. Firmenich I've mentioned, Stuart Jones, and if you look at John Sankey, so they're going a little more top end, so heavy configuration and almost into bespoking there. So again, using the product configurator to be able to maybe have custom heights and widths, and even where they go totally bespoke, they have to have a process to be able to handle that. So that process may be a simple questions and answers and attached document where you're dealing with a heavily bespoke item or a unique item, and that needs to follow maybe a different process. So the standard configured items follow one process. The bespoke item would actually move into the design department of a business, and so design start to form part of the overall process, but not for all sales, only for certain sales. And it's that level of flexibility that and then we may be getting from design actually getting bills and materials back from, say, a CAD system, and again, it's touching on that digital that whole element of being able to provide benefit to the business through digital means. Okay, and then Spectra Wood, for those in the States, so Chelsea has mentioned Spectra, and again, its efficiency, its control of costs is very important there. Okay, so WinMan is a broad ERP system. We wouldn't expect everybody to use all of it, but that single point of truth that has again been mentioned, so all the way through from those that are involved in kind of chasing opportunities, being able to chase spend in marketing, what quotations has that created, what quotations did we convert of those quotations, what being forming sales orders, and that driving into the kind of the inventory management, the purchasing, the manufacturing, being able to provide a due date based on the load within the business, through to shipping and point of POD recording, and all of that being integrated back through accounts, and then customer service, where the customer has an issue maybe with the product, or delivery is late, or that it's missing a piece, that kind of stuff. So that kind of sums up what ERP is about. So it's a very broad single solution, one version of the truth, and supporting your business's optimum business processes, your business's optimum processes through from the beginning to the end. And as Nick has mentioned, it's not necessarily going to be the best CRM system in terms of bells and whistles. There may be a better dedicated accounting system out there, but working with one single version of the truth and is we have found, and we're very much believers in, offers significant benefit to a manufacturing company, and with the features we've got in furniture supporting that. Okay, so if I can just briefly go into WinMan. So okay, so what I'm going to show, obviously it's getting towards the end of the presentation, so just touch on the product configurator, because that is often a model that's important to many businesses, but not all in the furniture industry, and then show a sales order utilizing that configurator that will generate a works order, and a little bit of, then move into the production planning, hopefully highlighting on some of the message that I mentioned at the beginning there, and shipping. So it's just really just a look-see at the WinMan user interface. It's in no way, shape or form a complete end-to-end demonstration. So it's really just to, like I say, just pick up on some specific vertical features that we have, as well as give the audience an introduction to our user interface and the look-see. Okay, so we're on a product configurator here. So as if you go onto a website, and I've been onto a couple of the audience's websites, and you get a model. Is it a small, a medium, and a large? That could be a bed. It could be a sofa. It could be a simple table, and so you get rather than having lots and lots of individual web pages, you've got a single page with options. So you choose your model, like I said, it could be a sofa, and you might have the small, the medium, and the large, and so that would be the option, would be the size or type. And then you've got the option item. And so this is the technical person in the back end would maintain a configurator model. So here's one example here, and you'll see it's got model type, table color, and then some chair options. If I pick a different one, more geared towards a three-piece suite, for example, you'll see it's exactly the what have I got here? So standard model was what I wanted. Yeah, so this is a slightly more, but you'll see it's using essentially the same toolkit. So it's basically the option and the option items, or another way of putting it is the question and the answers. So again, we've got a furniture model, which many furniture models will be, you'll have your Chelsea, or you'll have your Windsor, so they'll be based on places. This is based on American names. So you got a Colorado, a Louis, a Madison. So that would be with it. All of these have similar processing and option characteristics, so they can be controlled within one model. With a configurator, there's a little bit of trade-off between the number of models you have, configuration models, and the complex. So if you've got, you can have many models, and they can be specific to an individual furniture piece, or you can have one model, which means you only have to maintain any kind of changes in one place. And so there's a little bit of trade-off between the number of models and how complex they are. So within a model, you've got it. So all of these have, you've got your chair, your love seat, your small sofa, which are 2-seater, 3-seater, and then a grand. And then you could say, well, not all, or we're not going to offer all of those models for all of those pieces for all of those models. And this is where we can start to use what we call a little bit of logic. So it's kind of like tick box, or the logic that you would find in a traditional spreadsheet. So what we're seeing here is that if it's the model Louis, you can have the grand, otherwise you can't. So that's effectively what that is saying. And then how would you enter that? If I just show how this will be done from scratch. We build this statement up. There's obviously training that we provide, but if the model is a Louis, then you can have it, otherwise you can't. So that's kind of how you build this stuff up in WinMan. And the reason it's not just tick box stuff is that there could be fairly complex statements in there that are required, and the technical person, the furniture designer, would also get involved in the maintenance of this. And what is it providing? It's providing you with the ability to offer that personalization or customization without having to go back to complex and expensive IT resource. It's completely in your control, so you can offer new models, you can change the way that you do things without having to go back to, say, a programmer to be able to do that. So a configurator is a series of options and items, but as well as that, you can validate. So, like I say, the Grand was only available to the Louis model, not available to everybody else. And then when we get down to a little bit of more, so some of those companies that are offer even more customization and even bespoking to a degree, you can start to offer things like non-standard sizes. So you've got dimensions here, so you can specify a non-standard width, a different height of back cushion, and maybe how high the actual unit is, so the actual frame. And you can picture what a sofa might look like. It's got cushions, it's got a wooden frame, it's got legs, it's got feet. So if you're going for a non-standard width, that's going to involve quite a lot of changes to cushions and to the frame, potentially to kind of supports that are needed. And you can build those engineering rules into this configurator based on those inputs. And those inputs would have minimums and maximums, again, possibly leading back to the model that was selected. So this is kind of the engine behind here. And before we leave off here, we'll talk about what this generates. So hopefully many of you will be familiar with the bill of materials and kind of process routes to be able to make something. So this is what this is generating. It's generating a specific bill of materials. And so you've got things like the back cushions non-standard or the standard back cushions for the 01. So it's for the Louis model single-seater standard cushions, but if they were to have non-standard, this would be the product that would be entered on the bill of materials. And so if I look into this has actually got some rules as well. It's saying that I would only have this product, just click into that, I would only choose this component rather if it was a Colorado and it was a large, and it was not a non-standard, it wasn't a standard back cushions, and it wasn't a standard overall width, then I need bespoke cushions, is effectively what those series of statements are saying. And like I say, we offer a bit of training, but it doesn't get any more complex. It's basically, if the value is true, then you either have it or you don't have it. And here's a slightly more complex version of that. And then we're also seeing the instructions here. So as well as saying it's the non-standard cushion that we want when we go to either the internal supplier of that cushion, which could be a sub-assembly department, or it could be that you purchased the cushions. Here you'd be specifying what the non-standard width was and what the non-standard height adjustment, so that the purchased item that you're buying linked to that manufacturing order to make for the sales order also includes that level of customization. So and the other thing is that we actually have a sub-configurator. So one configurator can call another configurator. So for example, with the fabric, that in itself, if it's a single fabric, it will call the configurator where you select the fabrics. But if it's multiple fabrics, position 1 and position 2, you'll go and call that question and answer. What fabric do I want in what position for position 1 and position 2? So that's an example of the configurator there. Another key element that we have as a feature are what we call custom matrix tables. So rather than holding a lot of data in the model itself, we can hold some tables. So if I've created 3 which were based around a not untypical furniture manufacturer. So if it was the Louis, and we were going for a plain fabric in, say, here, and it was the single, it was the single fabric all over. For the grand, these are the metrages of fabrics that you use. So if you introduce a new fabric or a new, something other than a love seat comes along, so you've got those corner modules now, you can introduce a new column there, and the rows would pick up the so that the configurator will go off and say, well, if it was a single fabric and it was a grand and it was a Louis, you're going to need 16.8 meters for a plain. If it was a more complex fabric where there was matching involved on a single, you're going to need 18.3 meters. And it could be that, you go even more, complex patterns, simple patterns. Again, you can extrapolate that and expand that to support your requirements. So, this is just focused really on the configurator generating that price, the cost roll up, and the validity of those selections, and the routes to market, as I've mentioned, or the incoming orders could be coming via a website. Like I said, I've been on a couple of the websites. You choose a model, you choose a size, a color, a style, and those options come down into WinMan through the configurator model without needing to be rekeyed, and a bill of materials is created that would look at the inventory. It's about, the available to promise that I talked about. If it was in a showroom, then a very simple version of the WinMan sales order processing screen would enable, at the point of sale for a representative to talk through with the client. This is the model we want. This is the color. If possible, could we have it so much this width, because that will fit exactly where we want it to go. So they'd be entering that data, and they may get a quotation, which would then be finalized into an order. And it could be in that instance that we're taking a deposit. So WinMan is able to calculate that 50% deposit whilst you're there in store taking that order. So those are the kind of elements that that the configurator will handle. So if we see it in actual use, so if I drop into a manual quotation stroke sales order, so we're going to navigation, sales orders. Okay, it may be that you're starting at the CRM level with somebody walking into a showroom and just getting some information, and then following that up with a visit. I'll start straight off with the sales order. So if you've got the customer's information, you take that down. Like I say, you may have a standard lead time, but that might be affected by fabrics, etc., when we get into the actual model itself. What we've seen there behind, we can now, if we, was it a standard M? Model X. We'll do the first one. So it's this is the pod element, the very simple one that we selected. So I want the small, the medium, or the large. So it's a pod with chairs and a table within it. Is it going to be standard white? If I choose standard white, I'd be straight onto chair options. If there was a bespoke color, you'll see it's now giving me the next option where I can put in the ABS reference for the color. Like I say, if I go back to the color and just choose the standard white, those options disappear. And then we're into a sub-configurator where we're saying for position 1, I'm going to choose a fabric out of band 1, and that's going to be blue, and I'll keep it in position 2, fabric out of band. And again, I'll choose the blue for position 2. So slightly different models doing similar things. Ignore that. It's just a report or dashboard. And then it's generated a bespoke part number. It's still in a, we haven't finalized this, so we might want and priced it. So it's saying it's a model 2 with a white table in position 1. We're having a fabric from band 1, which is blue. In position 2, we're having a fabric from band 2, which is also blue. So and then if we look at, we can also generate a longer bespoke description if we want. So that's an example of the a simple example of the WinMan configurator in operation. And like I say, that could have come through somebody in a showroom using it in front of the customer, could have come from a website, or it could have come from an EDI message from our customer's customer, you know, through some of the large retail, multiple retailers that sell furniture and then pass their orders down to their supplier. Okay, so at this point it's in a new status. If I firm this, it's actually going to use those rules to generate two things. It's going to write, if it hasn't seen that combination before, it's going to generate a bill of materials, but it's also going to generate a works order. So we're making to order here. So our sales order header and line number is our works order. And then when I process this and firm it up, it's going to take a snapshot of that bill of materials to be able to, so we need the fabric kit, the table, and there's a process of upholstery. I've gone for a multi-level works order, so this is the parent, and as part of that firming up, it also created a child works order to make the table, and then a child works order for the chairs with the various fabrics. So if I go to this child works order, you can see the linkage. We have the parent, which is the overall assembly. We've then got the chairs and the table and some, I think that's the table, that's the chairs, and this is the various kits that we need in order to make that. So that's the parent, and those are the two children there. So if I go to this chair, for example, we can see this has fabric green, 7.5 meters. It needs a frame. It needs a foam and fiber kit, and it's going to take 30 minutes to put that pair of chairs together, or that chair together. And then, like I say, when we saw the overall assembly, because this is a pod with a chair and a table, there's again some process work to put that kit together. So with WinMan, we keep it nice and simple. We have both the materials and the process in one table. We call it a structure, and then we can be recording against that. So if there was a cutting process, we could be recording cutting, and this is where we come into what we call apps. So an app is a method of you know, just like you've got apps on your phone, there's an app for that. So WinMan apps are there to collect data. So when we book goods in, be that could be fabric, or it could be legs for a table or for a bed, it will tell you you can use an app rather than going back to a PC and selecting the purchase order. You can do it there in situ. If we move towards, say, the lean route, we could be telling the supplier how we want those labeled. We automatically with a barcode on it. And it could be the supplier could actually have that label in our format. If not, we can print a label at the point that we select the outstanding purchase order and stick that onto the onto the box of legs. They would then maybe go to a feeder store, and then at the point where we've got our assembly cells, when they run out of a box of legs, they'll request another one, and so we'd use an app to move the legs from stores to the point of use. And when that product is completed, we'd backflush those legs. So these are the kind of applications that we provide for real-time data capture. And as Tiffany said, Chelsea said earlier, what is that providing for us? Well, it's providing that accuracy of stock, but also we might then be able to report on wastage. So if they've requested another box of legs, and WinMan is saying, well, you should still have 16, and they say, well, no, we need to do a stock adjustment because we've scrapped those over the past week, you'll be able to then manage those costs, that scrappage, and from week to week and month to month, you can manage that kind of like I said, that scrappage, the reason codes, and if it's effective, you can put in changes to the process to try and reduce that waste and measure the success of that initiative. Apps as well so we're not going to show any apps today because we've only got a certain amount of time, So we've developed specific apps which are for the cutting of upholstery or hides. So WinMan will expect a certain meterage of material, but then you can record the actual meterage used. And again, you could have come across faults in the pattern, which means you had to use more. And so you've got that real-time, both accurate stock control, but you could be, as part of your estimating, particularly around expensive fabrics, thinking that you're going to use far less than you actually use, and that would cause you to then go back and assess the pricing of that fabric, for example, or even whether that fabric in particular is problematic, and therefore you might you might choose another one that would satisfy the customer. So these again are examples where WinMan can work in a vertical using the toolkits that we have to support the processes, those best processes. And hopefully the session I'm doing is just reinforcing a lot of the messages that came out earlier. Okay, and in terms of some of the other elements, we have a works order. We would then use the ability to schedule those elements. So you might have upholstery, you might have sewing, like I say, you may have one bill of materials with lots of processes, or you may have a multi-level bill of materials where the frame cell is effectively working a little bit independently to the overall upholstery cell. Similarly with the sewing cell that's sewing the kits, and et cetera, et cetera. So the way that we can structure WinMan, we think very much will can be aligned to your optimum business processes. So the sewing cell may need, would work best if it had some flexibility to be a number of days ahead of the upholstery, and a little bit of buffer in the system could work. Could mean that if it's doing leather work, it may, you could be taking advantage of changes in kit. If you're doing all the planes together from a cutting, you can layer those plain fabrics up and cut them in one rather than cutting them individually. And so it's those kind of elements. But what we're seeing here is those processes. It takes 60 minutes to upholster this together. You can then look at the load on either weekly or daily. If you've got a rush order that's come in, or if you've got some orders where the fabric has been delayed, we can use color to show those are being delayed. So you may need to push those out, and what can you pull back to balance the load? So a tool that's quite often used is it's very much like a T-card system, and it will allow you to drag and drop orders with the validation that you might see. So it could be that as an alternative, you can, if you've got an issue with a team, you could move that job down from the one upholstery team to the second upholstery team. And we can use things like skills matrix to say, well, is that team able to do that model? It may only be trained in certain models. And these are real life examples that we've come across within the furniture industry. So like I say, it's really just a look-see at WinMan, as well as some specifics around, and the sort of once something is made, we've got that transport. So a lot of what we see is you'll have various vans or transports dedicated to different regions on different days. And going back to the beginning, when you're trying to provide the customer with a promise date, have you got the fabric? Have you got what? Can you make it? What slot production slot can it go into? And then what transport will it be? Will it go on to provide that available to promise? Obviously, that doesn't affect all companies in the furniture industry. If you're making more so on the beds, you've got much more of a standard lead time. But also it could be that if you're in control of the delivery, that you've got a more limited delivery slot, say to some of the extended reaches of the country, Northern Ireland or Scotland, or down to kind of Devon, Cornwall. They may deliver on fewer days than the bigger conurbations. So being able to utilize that data in your planning can be quite key. And this is where we have these. Often they're automated, the population. So if I tick this order and say it's going to the North van for week 3 or whatever, we'd be allocating that order to that van. We'd then see that going on that van. that van will then be either from a volume perspective or from a number of drops. There would be a capacity, possibly weight, but more so probably with furniture with volume and number of drops and distances. And we use this here to integrate with transport optimization. So the AA itself offer a paid service where you could say, this is where I need to go. I need to be at this location at this time. And I've got a van that's so high and so wide and weighs so much, and it will do that transport optimization route through to specific packages that will do this. So with some of our customers, that rather than having the traditional routes where they're much more of a two-man and a van pickup and delivery type service, they will throw the whole pot at the optimization, and it will come back with the optimized route. So different ways of doing it, but this is often a key integration point from WinMan to transport optimization. And so in finishing off, you've then got apps for things like POD collection, so getting it signed off when you deliver it, taking a photo of it being in good condition, both when it was put into the packaging and when it was delivered to the customer. The other thing is the customer experience. So, the customer being able to use that website, being able to be provided with a available to promise date there and then, information being informed is often seen as good customer service. So, the customer could be interested that their fabric has been received in the factory, that it's gone into production, that it's been loaded onto the truck, and that it's at this stage in the delivery. And it's that that digital experience that from a customer perspective, that where we're informed, we know we don't have to worry about it. We're sat there, we know it's been loaded on the truck, and we know where it is specifically from the last delivery that was made, and that it's on time, etc. So that kind of completes my just a look-see at the software, and from a WinMan perspective, the look-see at the software, and it was easier really to put our business intelligence up as a slide, because a lot of data is generated from these systems, and typically people want to be informed by exception. So we very much, if you've got an order planned next week and some key material isn't available, then we can provide the planner with an exception. If we're looking to what we're providing to our customers in terms of, say, fabrics, we might want to see what the most popular ones are, and some of those popular ones we might want to stock, so we know that we've got that. We can provide a much better lead time. We're not buying to order. So being able to analyze, what are popular fashions and fabrics, and then reflecting that back in our offering is important, and that's where using some of this data with the kind of modern business intelligence tools, being able to dice and slice, look at what like I say, what fabrics on what models have been popular, what fabrics overall have been popular. From a business planning perspective, we've talked about from a improvement, what were the fault codes that caused that particular cell not to be actively working? Was it because that there was a problem with machinery? There was problem with the right materials not being in the right place at the right time? All of these, this information that is collected, going back to what Chelsea talked about, needs to be utilised. And if it's adding value, if it's giving us those KPIs that we can, and if people know that that the objectives are to improve, and they're being driven by real validated data, that leads to those improvements. So really finishing off with some of the what the systems provide, not only from a close support operationally, it's providing insights to enable improvement initiatives to be suggested, and then to be managed through data. Okay, so that's me, and I'll unshare my screen. And
great. Thank you, John. So now we are going to do some Q&A. And so we have a few questions that were already submitted, but feel free to continue to submit more. So we'll just kind of go quickly through a few of these. The first one, it says, we are a relatively small organization and don't have the levels of management mentioned to form project teams, etc. Is ERP really only for big businesses? So I think that is a really good question, and one that we get often is, when is my company ready for an ERP? And I know in my experience, and then I'll let others jump in as well. But in my experience, I have worked implementing at very small companies, people who had really just a core team of a handful of individuals. And, in those areas, I do think that obviously having a project team is great. There is a lot of work to be done, and it's nice to be able to delegate. But the key really is, if your company is at a point where centralized information is important, and really adding efficiency to the organization is going to take you to the next level, then I do think you can get the project done with the resources that you have. Those who are there, you have your key employees, and they're good employees, they'll be able to help you out. And, it really is about focus, right? So, like Jacqueline mentioned, the keeping it in scope. So that first project, that first go live, keeping the scope realistic to what your team can accomplish, and looking at the benefits of, given the things that we can accomplish or we want to accomplish in this phase one, let's focus on this. We'll get our system up and running with, at whatever level we can. And then as we grow, because the system will allow us to do that and have more capacity, then we can take on some of these more complex ideas. Does anyone else have anything that they want to add to that? Or?
Yeah, I can just, I think often the project team, so the project team would, as a minimum, you need somebody from accounts, you need somebody probably from customer facing side, from sales, and then somebody from operational. So even a team of 3 can be the starting point. So, and it's always going to be difficult, and there's never a right time, but probably next year is going to be more difficult as you grow and things become more complex. So that's a consideration. Not taking on other projects, so not moving factory or thinking we're introducing the biggest product range we've ever done in the middle of this. So trying to plan that into other projects within the overall business can help as well. So those just a couple of thoughts from me.
I think I would also add in that there's an issue, not just about numbers of people, but budget. And obviously there are different sized providers for different sized companies, really, and that might be something that Jacqueline could sort of help and work more on. But there are some very big providers for the multinational global companies, and then there are people who are perhaps specializing more on small companies. So it is all about provider as well. So I think bear that in mind, because the budgets will also be a constraining factor.
Yeah, sorry, it is about providers, but also making sure that we focus on priority. Not many companies, even larger companies, have the flexibility to be able to release a whole project team purely for the project. So it's usually the project manager, if anything, that they do appoint full time. The rest of the team have to do their normal day jobs as well, albeit that they've got support to do the fill-in. And I think it just really emphasises the fact the preparation side of it is something to take your time over. Plan something that's achievable and realistic. Don't think you can cut corners, because it'll just turn around and bite you at the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely. Great. Okay, so then the next question we have here, it says, what is, and it's maybe similarly to what we've been talking about, what is the best advice on keeping a digital transformation project on budget and within the set time scale? So if I were to jump in, again, I would probably talk about scope being a key there. when you set out during your selection process, you're going to have discussions about, these are the things that we require, and you're going to pick a vendor and talk about budget based on that. And then as you get into the implementation, it's easy to, find all the really neat tools and think, oh, we could do this, we could do that, we could do that. And it is great to note all of those and just know that there's an appropriate time for all of that. So trying to do everything at once is going to make the project more difficult and add potentially more stress. So really keeping on scope of, we set out with these benefits in mind, with this goal in mind, and achieving that goal and keeping that, as your focus, and then knowing that you can always add more to it. I know for WinMan, we're always talking about phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, being a partner. And so, the ERP that you select, you really need to make sure that that is the goal of, getting you up and running successfully, and then working with you as you grow and as you want to add, more and more to your offering.
Yeah, I would agree. I think keeping it tight, it's strong project management essentially, and making sure that you've got someone who's working on your behalf, not being disrespectful to WinMan or any other vendors. It's in their interest for the projects to grow, largely speaking, although they also want a successful outcome. So it's making sure that you have defined what you want, what you need in the first instance, and stick to it. Park the other nice to haves for later and evaluate them properly. Don't get tempted to be led astray.
And I might chip in there as well. I think it's sort of mirroring what's been said before, but the specification is absolutely critical. And I think the time that you put in up front is always paid back somewhere down the line, because the more you can get the planning right and the specification, because for me, scope isn't just about what you decide to do, it's also about the things you've forgotten. And inevitably, things that are forgotten are going to cost a lot more money, because they're additions that weren't in the specification, therefore weren't in the quote. So make sure you process mapped, from a business process point of view, and make sure that's specified. And then the vendors are effectively got complete visibility of what needs to be done when you come to the implementation.
Perfect. Okay, so I know we're a little bit over, so I'm going to put our contact information up here. Feel free to take a screenshot, jot it down. Any other additional questions, please reach out to any of us or all of us. We're happy to hear from you. And I believe we will be sending out information with these contact details as well. So thank you everyone for joining us. We really enjoyed speaking with you today. Hopefully you learned a lot, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.